Hey there, it's Lara here with your weekly Witchy Wednesday astrology video for the week of February 20th to 26th, 2019. Thanks a lot for being here. If you're a new subscriber, welcome. I really appreciate you jumping on board here. And please, if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask them in the comments below or reach out to me. Of course, if you want to reach out for a personal reading, you can always do that at the link below to my website. Just head on over there and you can see what's on offer. I had some feedback this morning from a recent reading that I did, and it was really a good way to start my day. It was very positive, and the person was really kind of blown away by the information, and so I love what I do, and I really do appreciate that kind of feedback. But let's get on with it here. We are just coming off the full moon in Virgo, right? And last week's video, I spoke at length about that. So if you didn't watch that video, you may want to go back and listen because it's still relevant. We are still under those energies. And this full moon, as I spoke about last week, is really powerful, really healing, really helpful. And I feel like that full moon and some other things that are going on for us, including Chiron moving into Aries, Uranus about to move into Taurus, the various things are happening to lead us down a road of healing ourselves, of returning to wholeness. And I spoke about this briefly yesterday on Facebook. And I don't know if you follow on Facebook, but you might want to do that. The link is below to Facebook and Instagram as well, because sometimes I post things there. Often I post things there that I don't talk about here, but the Virgo full moon spoke to this sense of returning to wholeness, right? And seeking wholeness, seeking our true perfect selves. And when I say perfect, I don't mean perfect in the way we often think of it. I mean our authentic nature, right? Our who we really are. And I feel like we're in this process of that right now. And it's almost like the shamanic practice of soul retrieval, which I am not an expert on, but from what I understand, it's like calling back pieces of our soul that have been scattered about over the course of our lives that we've left behind for various reasons. And I feel like we are all in various stages of that process right now. So, it takes a lot of hard work and discernment and courage, and a willingness to be vulnerable. But in the end, I truly believe that it's worth it, right? So, a couple other things I want to touch on before I get into the real crux of this reading, which is going to be largely about what's happening with Venus and Pluto this week, and I'll get to that in a minute. But before I do that, I'm going to show you the chart actually right now as I'm talking about this. I want you to take note of something here. You see, there is the air sign of Gemini. There's nothing going on in Gemini, right? There is the air sign of Aquarius. Nothing going on in Aquarius. There is the air sign of Libra. Where is Libra here? Nothing going on in Libra. So there is not a lot happening with air energy at this moment in time. However, there is all of this going on in the earth sign of Capricorn, right? South Node, Pluto, Venus, and Saturn. The full moon in the earth sign of Virgo. Mars in the earth sign of Taurus. Uranus is just about to tip in there as well. Then Mercury beside Neptune in Pisces with the sun, right? Water sign. And also the North Node in a water sign of Cancer. So there's a whole lot going on in water and earth right now. but not a lot happening in air. A smattering of stuff happening in fire. So what does this mean? Well, for me, I feel like this is calling our attention to the fact that water and earth actually work very well together when they're used in the right balance, right? And so earth and water can form something solid, something long lasting, something beautiful and natural. And the wisdom and intuition and feeling and imagination associated with the water element, combined with the solid, grounded, practical, approach of the earth element, can lead us to creating something really sustainable, very aligned, very long lasting at this time. And so, I wanted to mention that to you. And this segues into something else I want to mention briefly. And that is that I just want to talk about Mercury. There's a lot happening with Mercury right now. It's sextiling all of those planets in Capricorn. And it's conjuncting Neptune, right, in the water sign of Pisces. So it's right beside Neptune. But it's also making a square to Jupiter this week, Jupiter in Sagittarius. So Mercury rules the air sign of Gemini. It was also the ruler of this full moon in Virgo. And so, and it's readying right now to go retrograde on March 5th, right before Uranus moves into Taurus. So what does this all mean? Well, as I see it, and I spoke to Mercury in Pisces a while back, but just, briefly, Mercury's not super comfortable in Pisces because Mercury is all about the logic and the rationale and the intellect, and our thinking processes. And Pisces is about the intuition, generally. And so logic is kind of right out the window right now. It's so if you're trying to navigate the world and what's happening in your life and make sense of things using only your rational thinking mind, your logical mind, the facts, then it can be a little crazy making right now. It's a time that we are being called to trust our intuition, trust that wisdom of our inner guidance system, right? Our higher power, our whatever you want to call it, whatever terminology you want to use is fine, but to trust that wisdom, that deeper intuitive wisdom. And that can be hard for us to do because in our society we are not really conditioned to do that. It can all be a little bit too woo-woo for a lot of folks. Not for some of us, obviously, probably not for most of you that are watching this right now. But, we are very much conditioned to trust our minds over our hearts and souls. And we are being shown right now that that is not the best way forward. That, there's a place for both of those things, but perhaps we have gone too far one way. And so, there's a lot of uncertainty right now, and it's okay for us to admit that and to acknowledge it, and to be okay with it and still move forward, being guided by our hearts and our souls, by our intuition, right? Leading us in the right direction. And this square to Mercury and Jupiter, what's happening ultimately on Friday, it can be a time of, where people are prone to exaggeration and the facts are blurred somewhat. It can be a time of taking in or giving out too much information, like information overload. So ultimately, don't overpromise around that time because you might not be able to deliver. And don't assume. Don't be a know-it-all. Don't approach conversations and communications that way. Really, this conversation between Mercury and Jupiter is asking us to be positive and truthful in our communications, to gather information right now, but don't be too quick to judge or make a decision at this time. Okay, so I wanted to clue you into that. And now what I want to do is I want to spend the rest of the time talking about Venus conjuncting Pluto and all the energy in Capricorn opposing the North Node. Yeah, the North Node in Cancer. So Venus is between Saturn and Pluto as we speak, and it's going to meet right up in the sky with Pluto on Thursday and Friday. And like with any astrological energy, you've heard me say this before, if you've heard me before, um, there's like a ripple effect, right? It doesn't happen like at this moment in time. This is when, any events or what have you are going to occur. It can be the peak of it, but it ripples out on either side of the actual event. And so we may feel and experience whatever it is on either side, right, of the event. So ultimately, though, this is a powerful time for relationships. And it can be a time where people, partners in particular, and when I say partners, I mean anybody you're in a close personal relationship with, a significant other, close friend, business partner, a rival, even people can demand a lot from each other, and there can be power struggles even. But ultimately, it can be very good because this energy is basically asking us to seek depth in our relationships and to transform them in some way. When Pluto is involved, there is no place for superficiality. We're not talking about superficiality in relationship right now. That won't cut it. It can be a time of intensity. It can be a time of passion, right? And in relationships, which can be a really good thing or maybe a not so good thing. It all depends on how we approach it, on how we harness the energy, on how we respond to it. It can be a really magnetic time where we have the capacity to attract partnership, to attract love, to attract money and resources. Don't misuse this energy. And what would it look like were someone to misuse the energy? Well, that would look like perhaps manipulation, right? Manipulating other people to get what you want, abuse of power, deception in relationship. So those are all potentials when Pluto is involved as well. But ultimately, that's not the way we want to harness this, right? It is a really good energy for digging deep and for transforming our relationships to other people, to ourselves, because if you've been here before, you've heard me say we are in relationship to ourselves, very much so as well. Our relationship to the material world, our money, our values. And be aware that, with this conversation happening with Venus and Pluto, our subconscious drives might bubble up. So it's really important to act with integrity and awareness and to trust our intuition again, right? Intuition over logic right now, which I know may seem like it doesn't make a lot of sense. But with Mercury and Pisces, things don't tend to make a lot of logical sense. So that's just where we're at right now. And it's best not to try to work against that, but work with it instead. So Venus conjuncting Pluto is sitting across the sky from the North Node in Cancer. And obviously, it's also conjuncting the South Node because the South Node and the North Node are opposite each other in the sky, right? So this is happening between the 24th and the 26th over the weekend. Again, though, it has a ripple effect, right? It's not like at the moment. But this is a time of asking, are our relationships and our values, are they serving our evolution and our soul's growth ultimately? And if the answer to that question is no, then what do we do about it? What can we do about it? Right? How can we take some practical steps towards changing that? So with Venus and Pluto and the South Node in Capricorn and Saturn as well, opposing the North Node in Cancer, this is the axis of public versus private, right? our public life, who we are out there in the world, our career, our status, our our ambitions, our authority or relationship to authority, versus our home and family and place of living, and where we feel in our comfort zone kind of thing. So ultimately, this is about alignment of our true selves, like you heard me speaking about in regards to the Virgo full moon. Aligning our internal life and our external life, right? And I mean that in a couple of different ways. Our external life, as I just mentioned, our public life, who we are in public versus who we are in private. Also, who we are on the outside versus who we are on the inside, right? Is all of that in alignment? That's the ultimate goal. So, the North Node in Cancer, as I see it, it's like it's calling us home, so to speak. And Chiron in Aries is lending us the courage to heal ourselves and our identities, right? So that we can be aligned and whole, the full moon in Virgo. So all of these pieces are working together to help us out right now. So let's use them wisely. So I'm going to spend the rest of the time, because I have a lot to say to each sign, speaking to this. And where is Venus and Pluto conjuncting in your chart? Like, where is Capricorn in your chart opposite the North Node in Cancer? And what does this mean, right, for you, for each of us? And when I see each of us, I'm speaking to each rising sign first and foremost. If you don't know your rising sign, please listen for your sun sign and your moon sign. Those will give you some information. And it's just that when we're doing general readings, the rising sign is the most accurate. And it can tend to be what people resonate with on a day-to-day level. But you may also resonate strongly with your sun sign and or your moon sign. And that kind of depends on what's going on for you and what's in your personal chart, right? So I'm going to start, as I did last week, with the first house rather than the first sign. So I'm not going to go Aries to Pisces. I tried that for a while, and I just didn't feel right. It just didn't work for me personally. I know a lot of people choose to do that, and that's cool for them. But I feel like starting with the first house is what makes most sense to me. And so that would be Capricorn in this case, because the conjunction of Pluto and Venus, and eventually Pluto and Saturn, all that energy is happening in your sign, in Capricorn. And ultimately, Capricorn, I think I've used that word a lot in this video, but this is about getting right with yourself first and foremost. So do your insides match your outsides, right? Just like I was saying. Is there a balance? Is there a feeling of alignment in your relationships, your significant relationships, your partnerships? Do you have that feeling in terms of the relationship you have to yourself? That's key right now. Are you giving too much or taking too much in your one-to-one relationships? You might feel a strong pull to dig deep and transform your relationship to your money, to your resources, to what and who you value. You might feel a desire to be more of yourself out there in the world, to really come across more as who you really are. And that can be done in a whole bunch of different ways. Like maybe you could have like a complete overhaul of your physical appearance, for example, that allows you to feel more authentic, like you're presenting your authentic self to the world. It could be even in your approach, how you approach the world is changing in some way. There's a need for you, Capricorn, with the North Node in the 7th house in Cancer, your opposite sign, to let go of or to transform the status quo to like the way it's always been done, right? The rules, the structures, the traditions, and to embrace a new way of being that feels ultimately more nurturing, more connected to your tribe, more emotionally secure, and relationships play a big role in this dynamic for you. And so that's for you, and I hope that you find that helpful. So that North, just incidentally, that North Node in Cancer piece is playing out for like the next year. I can't remember exactly when the North Node leaves Cancer, but it's like at least the next year that this is still going on. So that's for you, Capricorn, and I'm going to move on to Sagittarius. Sagittarius, the Venus-Saturn conjunction is happening in your second house opposite your eighth house. So this is the axis of form, like the material world, versus transform. And we transform our relationship to the material world through sharing, through being vulnerable with others, through intimate connections with others, right? This is an opportunity to transform how you relate to money, to resources, to values, to what you value, to your self-worth. And to have that area of your life be more aligned and more grounded and more in harmony. You're being encouraged to seek balance between standing on your own 2 feet and relying on others to support you, kind of thing. Your intimate relationships and your shared resources, or even any deep psychological wounding that you have, are calling for your attention right now. These are areas that are calling for attention, calling to be transformed, potentially through relationship. Your survival instincts might be up for review at this time too, Sagittarius. And you might be magnetized to somebody or something that you think will help you feel more secure and more stable. So just remember to allow your intuition to help you navigate whatever comes up in that area at this time, and to kind of trust that wisdom and not just, what seems like the logical, rational facts kind of thing. Okay, so that's for you, Sag. I hope that's helpful. And I'm going to move on. I'll flip my notes here to Scorpio. I'm just going to take a quick sip of my kombucha. Clear mind kombucha. I need that today. This is the 3rd time I've done this. I feel a little foggy. Could also be Mercury and Pisces, right? So Scorpio, this energy for you is centered around your 3rd house of communications, thoughts, daily interactions, especially with your peers and your siblings and your neighbors, people in your community, cousins even. It's in that area that there might be some intensity brewing for you, Scorpio, and a need to approach. There is a need to approach how you relate to those people, those, like, how you relate in your daily interactions, how you communicate. There's a need to do that in a powerful and truthful way. So ultimately what I'm trying to say here is that communicating with integrity is of the utmost importance right now. And you may be magnetized towards somebody because of their communication style. Or the reverse may be true. Somebody or somebodies may be drawn to you because of how you communicate, because of your communication style. And that may, this arena of communication may transform existing relationships, any existing relationships that you have, or allow you to form new and lasting relationships potentially as well. And then the North Node in Cancer is in your 9th house, and it's calling you to feel more secure in your worldview and your philosophy, in your life as it relates to education in some way, teaching, learning, travel even. You might be sort of being called to do some teaching or some learning or some traveling at this time, right? And taking those opportunities will ultimately be transformative in some way. It may allow you to connect to your tribe and to feel more secure in the world, to feel more nurtured and taken care of in the world. So that's for you, Scorpio. I hope you find that helpful. And I'm going to move on to Libra. And Libra, your home and your family and your sense of home and even your physical place of living, your roots, your connection to mothering, the mother figure, Mother Earth even, is highlighted with Venus conjuncting Pluto. And this can be a call to transform your relationship with a family member, your sense of home, like I mentioned, or even draw your attention to how your place of living might impact your relationships in some way. There may be power struggles on the home front in some way, but equally there could be, a lot of intensity, a lot of passion, significant connection on the home front, and that can lead to really powerful transformation. The North Node in Cancer is in your 10th house, and it's asking you if you feel aligned with your career ambitions, really, your public persona, your relationship to authority. Does your personal life feel aligned with your public life? Is a significant question for you, Libra. And if not, what steps can you take to feel more in sync in those two areas of your life, public and private? Seeking a sense of emotional security, nurturing, and hominess in terms of your career ambitions, what you do in your career, your public reputation and persona is really what the North Node is asking you to do. And that may require some kind of transformation on the home front for you. Okay, Libra, I hope that's helpful. And I'm going to move on to Virgo now. Virgo, this might be a time of intense relationships or transformation of relationships when it comes to your children or children that you're associated with, or parenting even, or your creative life in some way, how you have fun, the things you do because you like to do them, you enjoy them. There can be some heart talks with children potentially right now that can lead to some deep change and transformation. There could also be power struggles with children or with creative people or in terms of your creative life, or in terms of what you're doing for fun and pleasure and joy. You could be magnetized to some kind of creative project that could prove ultimately transformational and healing. And this 5th house area, Virgo, is really in focus for you throughout this year and into 2020, because that's where the looming Saturn-Pluto conjunction is, and the South Node in Capricorn, and right now Venus as well, right? And is there. So there's a focus in that 5th house area. The North Node in Cancer is opposite the chart in the 11th house, and that is encouraging you to connect with your tribe, to align with like minds, to become part of a group that feels like home, to be more nurturing, and to seek emotional security through group connections, through friendships, through networks. That can even be online. Also, to move towards a vision for your future that feels aligned with your true self, right? Your true essence, who you are as a whole person. And so that may come about through a connections with groups, right? And the other thing I thought of for you, Virgo, was that children and their friendship groups might come into play here in some way as well. So that's just something that came up that I thought I would mention. Moving on now to Leo. Leo, this is happening in your 6th house. So you're in a place of transforming the way you do day-to-day life. And that can be in terms of your daily work, right? Your work tasks, whether those be paid or unpaid work tasks, how you serve others, how you care for your own health and wellness, or just in the arena of health and wellness in general. There can be some heart to hearts with a significant other potentially, or even with business partners or close friends that revolve around those themes. There can be power struggles also in that area if we allow them, right? And some deep, long lasting change, though, in how you relate to that life area and the people connected to it, right? The day to day, which includes yourself, is on offer for you. And then with the North Node in Cancer in the 12th house, which is opposite the 6th house, there's a call to get right with your spiritual life, Leo, with your unconscious, potentially how you sabotage yourself. Even also, the 12th house can have to do with our hidden abilities and talents, right? So recognizing those, coming to terms with those, acknowledging those potentially. The North Node in Cancer in your 12th can be asking you to reevaluate how you approach your rest and relaxation and solitude, and to transform that in a way that feels nurturing and lends to your sense of emotional security. And then also, Leo, what I wanted to say to you was that it's possible that family dynamics or your like emotional inner unconscious world might be impacting you on a really deep level at this time. So take the time you need to reflect on that, right? And to align your daily routine, your daily life with your spiritual life, with your inner life. And so that's what's on the table for you these days, Leo. So hopefully that's helpful. I'm going to move on to Cancer now. And the focus for you, Cancer, is on relationships. This is happening in your 7th house. Vino. I might need some vino after this. Venus conjuncting Pluto is happening in your 7th house. And so this is all about your relationships, your close personal relationships, right? Relationship with significant other, with business partners, close friends, even rivals. And so there can be some intensity in relationships right now for you. Some deep connections can be made, or there can be a realization of unequal power dynamics in your relationships. It can also be that you are a magnet, for attracting a passionate relationship right now, or you are, attracted to somebody else in that way, drawn to somebody else in that way. And then the other thing is, the old way of doing things needs to be reviewed, particularly when we're talking about relationships. It needs to be reviewed. It needs to be transformed in some way. The North Node in your sign, right? So in your first house, is calling you home to yourself. That's the way I see this. So some questions to ponder might be, who are you and who do you want to be in the world? Is your relationship to yourself a healthy one? Do you feel aligned and balanced between yourself and the others in your life, right? So is there a balance there? Is who you appear to be on the outside really who you are on the inside? So this can be a time of examining and evolving the relationship to mothering, to the mother, to being your own mother. It can be a time of being who you needed when you were younger, potentially. A time of nurturing, of connecting to home, family, in a healthier way, in a way that leads to more emotional security and self-love and acceptance. And that's for you, Cancer. So I hope that's helpful. And then moving on to Gemini. Gemini, this is in the 8th house. I'm just going to take a quick sip here of my kombucha. That's not beer, in case you're wondering. So how you share resources, intimacy with others, that kind of thing is going through an intense period for you right now, Gemini. There is deep transformation in that area if you will allow it. And in order to allow it, that requires you to be vulnerable, right? In some way. So there can be deep, intense dealings or conversations with those you have intimate relationships with. And when I say intimate relationships, I mean those you are closely intertwined with, right? That you are in a vulnerable situation with in some way. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It could be also who you share resources with. And that can include like insurance companies, the tax people, all of that, wills, inheritances, that kind of thing. But ultimately, those dealings that you have in this regard can be healing and transformative, right? If you allow them to be. Or, Gemini, there can be power struggles. There can be secrets and manipulation as well in this area, particularly if you're not willing to let your guard down. But ultimately, this can be an opportunity for, profound healing and transformation here. And even if we're talking about psychological healing, so it can be a really good time to seek out some support person, a therapist, or some kind of healer that you feel safe with, that you feel connected to, that you feel can help you in some way, help you heal any wounding, psychological wounding. And the North Node in Cancer is asking you to evolve in a way, or evolve the way, I guess, you deal with, evolve the way you deal with your own resources, right? Your money, your values, your self-worth, your sense of survival and security in the world. And that is most effectively done in a nurturing way, in a Cancerian way. And it could potentially be through a living arrangement, a place of living, real estate, or again, connection to the mother or the mothering aspect, right? Nurturing, even Mother Earth, or mothering yourself in some way. That could all fall into play here for you, Gemini. So that's for you. And I'm going to move on to Taurus now. And Taurus, this is happening in your ninth house. So that sort of intense meetup between Venus and Pluto is in the ninth house for you. And this can lead to some deep connection and some transformation in any relationships that fall in the arena of teaching, learning, travel, connection to foreign cultures, other cultures, your philosophy and worldview. You might be drawn to a teacher or teaching that has a powerful impact on you and leads you to transform your worldview, right? Your perspective. It could also lead to power struggles in relationships with like teachers or students, for example. Perhaps you will take a trip that leads you to some kind of powerful transformation. You might meet someone that you're really drawn to when you're traveling. Maybe you're feeling a deep need to transform your relationship to higher learning in some way, or to travel even. Like, maybe you're not somebody who travels a lot and you're thinking that you would like to do more of that, for example. And that can have a really profound effect on you. This can also have to do with power struggles in relationship in terms of church or religious organizations or dogma, or feeling intensely drawn to some kind of religious philosophy. And then the North Node in Cancer in your third house is encouraging you to evolve the way you communicate and think on the day-to-day, to be more nurturing and emotionally secure in your communications and your thought processes. Perhaps even gentler on yourself when we're talking about, how you talk to yourself, how you communicate with yourself. Communications with peers, with siblings, with your community can evolve during this transit of the North Node. And you're ultimately seeking alignment between your worldview, right, and your daily communications. So does what you think and believe, how you see the world, and what you say and how you say it, do those things align? Are they in sync? So that's something to consider for you, Taurus. Moving on to Aries. Aries, this is happening in your 10th house. That's the focus for you. So this is about your public persona, your image, your status, your career ambitions, your relationship to authority. There might be some deep transformation that comes about in that arena at this time. So how you relate to the outside world in general might be changing. The public realm. It could be that you meet someone, maybe through work, like through your career, through a work project, or someone in authority who you feel a magnetic connection to. The person could potentially have a profound impact on you and ultimately lead you to transform, your public image in some way or your career goals in some way. There can be power struggles, potentially too, with authority or intense connections with people in authority around this time. The alignment of public with private life is highlighted for you, with the North Node being in Cancer in your 4th house. So you're being encouraged to evolve towards a more nurturing home life, to focus on your place of living, your sense of family and tribe and what home means for you, your roots and your emotional security, so that ultimately your public and your private lives can fall in sync. And Aries, just be gentle with yourself in this process. It's an ongoing process for you with the North Node in Cancer for the next year or so still. All right, moving on to Pisces. Pisces, this is in your 11th house where Venus and Pluto are meeting up. And there may be some deep transformation in your friendships, in any groups and associations you're connected with, networks, that kind of thing. You might encounter, a group that you have a deep connection to. And like you feel like you can really be yourself with these people and let your guard down potentially. There might be some intense sharing in a group setting that can happen right now. Or there may be some power struggles and some manipulation, some power dynamics, right, in a group setting. You might feel magnetically drawn to some group or organization, or they may be drawn to you as well. So use your intuition, that powerful Pisces intuition, to determine whether or not that's a good fit for you. The 11th house also speaks to our hopes and our visions for the future, and you may encounter someone or a group of someones who have a profound impact on how you see your future, on how you envision your future. With the North Node in your 5th house, you are being called to be more nurturing, more emotionally secure, and at home in terms of your creative self-expression. With your children and your parenting style, with children you work with or you're related to, with your sense of fun and how you have fun. So if things in that area have felt like all work and no play for the last while, Pisces, it's time to change how you relate to that area of life. Okay, and last but not least, moving on to Aquarius. Aquarius, this Pluto Venus intense energy is focused in an unseen area for you ultimately. There may be some intense dreams or spiritual experiences, right? This is all happening in the 12th house. It can feel like there's like communication from someone who has passed, or messages of healing and transformation coming through that may be in your dream life potentially. Your unconscious motivations and patterns might be examined through a deep connection to another, or even in solitude, your connection to yourself, to your higher power, to spirit. So communicating with your higher self, or even the spirit world, however you envision that, may be on the table for you right now. And if you have a tendency towards self-sabotaging behaviors or habits, this can be brought to your attention right now. And it's a good time to dig deep and transform those behaviors. It may be a time of, some intense dealings involving hospitals, retreat centers, prisons, ashrams, other such places and institutions. Your unconscious life is pretty intense at this time, in all likelihood, Aquarius. Don't fight it. Don't engage in power struggles, but rather face it, with courage and vulnerability, and allow the transformation that wants to happen to happen. And then with the North Node in Cancer in your 6th house, you're being asked to evolve towards a more nurturing, emotionally secure daily routine, really. So this includes your daily work tasks and your health and wellness routines. You're being called to really nurture that area of your life and potentially be less regimented, less authoritarian, less burdened in that area of your life. The North Node is asking you rather to seek balance between your day to day and your spiritual life, so that it feels more aligned and more comforting, right? That your daily grind feels more aligned with who you are, and more nurturing for you. Okay, so we got through all 12 signs, and I hope that you found that helpful as always. Please reach out if you have any questions, if you want a reading, all of that. And I will see you next week, okay? Take good care. Bye bye.